following that stuff this morning is just so difficult. I was sitting there watching it this morning thinking I need to leave. I just can't be any longer. It's not going to work. And for me, a lifelong space fan, I've got space themed sleeve with all of the different landers, Apollo, all that all over it. And then in continuous improvement, this is like a dream day for me. I'm like a kid in Diggerland. It's absolutely amazing. And I am a living product of inspiration by continuous improvement. And I'm just going to take you through, you might find it super boring, you might find it really interesting, but I'm going to take you through the journey that I've been on for continuous improvement, how it all started for me back in July 2001, and where I'm at now, and what I'm trying to do with the LCS podcast. So, my journey started as a postman in Royal Mail, and that was me with my van, back in 2001. I used to literally do a delivery round, so I'd get up in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, go into work, very manual process, all the letters would come in, we'd stand there manually and put them in the pigeonholes, lots of human error, lots of defects. Everybody would carve the job up, we'd all go in really, really early, we'd run around our rounds, we'd take our cars out to get round quicker. We was paid till 2 o'clock and we was back in bed by 9 AM. Right? It was the culture that was a dream for a young 19-year-old lad who just wanted to go to work for a few hours and then enjoy life. And I moved from that into the processing element of the business. And the processing element is where the great big mail centres where all of the mail goes and it gets processed through different machines, different types of mail, and then broken down into geographical areas and it's shipped to those different places. And in that role, I got to drive around in a van 3 times a day and empty out post boxes. And that was even easier than the deliveries, because if I didn't have to worry about carrying heavy weights, I just went and emptied the post boxes. And one of the areas that I covered was Thornton Heath in Croydon. And Thornton Heath is a little bit rough, okay? It's a little bit dangerous, which is probably why they gave it to me. And one day I was in this post office and I was collecting the special deliveries, and all of a sudden these guys came in with like balaclavas on and guns, and they're saying to the guy behind the counter, give us all your special deliveries, give us your money. And I was the only person this side of the glass with the people with the guns. And I'm thinking, career choice has gone a bit wrong. The guy behind the counter pressed the alarm and the alarm went off. These guys ran out and they were gone. So the police turned up, they interviewed us, and I stayed for about an hour, and then the police said, right, you can go now. So the guys gave me the special deliveries. I put them in the back of my little Sherpa van and drove off. I got around the corner and I thought, I've got all the gear in the back here that they was after. So I was like, so I drove back to the mail centre, and I told them I was a little bit nervous about going out there again. I didn't quite fancy it. And in true Royal Mail fashion, they sent me out with a guy called Spider-Man. And we called him Spider-Man because he was massive and his whole face and head was covered in tattoos. So nobody messed with him. So for a week I did my round with Spider-Man. That's when I knew it was safe to carry on. So after being on the front line for a period of time, I'd done all the different roles, I knew how it all worked, I'd cut all the corners and I was a proper jacket lad, probably never tell. And then I met my now wife and we decided that we wanted to get married. And we laid down this deposit on this wedding venue, and never in a million years was going to be able to afford this wedding. So she encouraged me to apply for a manager's role. Now my cousin was doing that manager's role as like a step-up role. He'd done it for 2 years as a step-up. And he said to me, yeah, go on, apply for it, just do it. And I got the job, and he ended up having to work for me, which is a really awkward situation, and he hasn't really spoken since. But I spent 2 or 3 years as a distribution manager learning how to be a manager, right? It was all about management. Now, I just want to share with you one of the things that I was in control of. So this is called a ball ring. And the way, I don't know if they still do it like this, because this was a long time ago, but the way it works is all the mail comes in on those front containers, big bags full up with mail. Then each of those pallets around the outside is a different region or area within the Croydon borough. And all those people in the middle are the postmen. And what they do is they walk around, they pick up the bag, they read the label, and then they walk across and then drop it in the right one. It's like battery hens, okay? They're just walking around in this ball ring, so much waste, like pull your hair out. My job as the manager, as I was told, was to stand at the front like that, like this. And that was my job. 8 hours a day, I stood there like that. These guys were old enough to be my dad, and I'm standing in front of them with my arms crossed, and then slowly they'd slip off and disappear. then it'd be my job to go, please, please, can you come back? Please, can you come back and do the work? It was horrific, awful experience. And my managers threw me in the deep end. No support, no guidance, just you've got to stand there, and if they go, you write them up. When you write them up, the union then tells you can't write them up. So then you don't write them up, then they disappear again. We go round and round and round in circles. Like, awful experience. I learned some really valuable lessons in that time about leadership and about lean, but I didn't know it at the time, and this would come later. I was told it's always been done this way, it's how we do it. It's just so stressful and horrible. Then Royal Mail was about to privatise, and as part of that, they went onto the stock market. So what they did is they were going to introduce continuous improvement, and they went with something called world-class manufacturing, which is actually, it was called world-class mail, and it was the 10 pillars. So you had your safety, quality, cost of employment, WO, your workplace organisation, and all that sort of stuff. So when they brought this in, I was like, save me, I want to come and do that, get me out of this horrible situation. And they had a champion who was a senior leader, and he pulled me across. And I picked up WO. And the way that the process worked is you had the professor, so this is our professor, amazing guy, absolutely brilliant. He had a great business model. He'd come over, give us lecture notes, which were like this, that made no sense, and we had to decipher what they meant. So this was about WO, this was about your mirror, your ergonomics and your waste. He'd tell us this stuff, he'd then go away. He'd then come back 6 weeks later and audit us. So it's literally like this, and there's this little red dot, you sit on the table there, he'd point at what you're talking about. He'd tell you you're rubbish, then he'd come back 6 months later, charge you another 20 grand and teach you again. It was the most amazing model that I tried to replicate, but it didn't work. But this guy was a genius, absolute genius. He came from Toyota, he really knew about lean, and he had a great way of explaining things and letting the penny drop. And he used to say, you go too slow, you go too slow. Because I showed him a picture of Royal Mail, like when Henry VIII was around. Then I showed him a picture of how we do it now. And the only thing that changed were the uniforms. Like, everything else was exactly the same. It was like, you see, you see. And people used, I used to do it after lunch, just like this. And people, when I was having the buffet, the professor would sit down in the corner and everyone else would be down here. So I thought, I need to make friends with him because he was quite hard on people. So I used to Google his books, then go and sit next to him and go, Professor, I've read your book, and I literally reel off the synopsis that I've read of this book. And he'd go, oh, brilliant, brilliant. Then we went back into the auditorium to present, and he'd sit there and he'd go, the one I've been waiting for. And he was my best friend, right? He was really friendly with me, he gave me lots of his time. He invited me to Fiat in Italy to have a look how they were doing things. Wasn't allowed to go, but he invited me anyway. He invited me. The model that we used there, I call it the SAS style of continuous improvement. So we had a team that were released from their day jobs, all pillar leads. We'd all work in a room out the back, which was called the world-class room. We'd work there every single day. Then when the professor was coming, we'd roll continuous improvement out, ask everybody to get involved. We'd make nice storyboards on the wall. And then we would get them to talk about it in front of the professor, then the audit would be over and we'd roll it back away again. So it's like SAS, we'd like swing through the room, smash the windows, the world-class team are here. And we would lead WCM, but it didn't embed. It looked good, sounded good, but it just wasn't happening. It was just a mess. But from that experience, I learned how not to do it. And I was really disengaged because I really, really believed in this continuous improvement stuff. And it took over my life. I was reading books, I was watching videos on YouTube. I just became obsessed with it, absolutely obsessed. And I learned to public speak, which suddenly became a real passion. And then they used to wheel me out when we had guests come over from other companies to do all the presentations and talk to them because I could inspire them. And before I knew it, I was talking about stuff that I didn't know anything about, but everybody thought I did because I was able to just repeat what I'd heard, like now. And I had this massive drive to be the best. And it's a bit of a trait, but if I'm going to do something, I've got to do it 100%, and I've got to be, maybe not the best, but the best I could possibly be. And I'm really driven like that. So I got frustrated, and I moved into deliveries. And when I moved back to deliveries, I managed to work my way up the ladder to become a senior operations manager. And at that point, I was offered an opportunity to go to a company, which I did. And Before I left, I managed to go to the NEC Arena and Royal Mail had this massive event, I don't know if they still do it, but every year where you're on stage like this, but you can't see the audience, it's all tiered seating and it's all dark as the lights are in your eyes and your mic'd up. And I got to present one of the countermeasures that we made in the caller's office where they were trying to find the packages when the customers were coming to collect them. And I'm really proud that when I go to my local caller's office now where I live, they're still using that system and it's everywhere. And I'm really proud that that was mine, it's my legacy that I left behind. So I left that company and I went to work for another company which is all about the people and it's all about continuous improvement and being the best you can be, and it really suited me. And it's here that I've been able to develop as what I would call a leader. So I've moved away from being a manager and I now like to think of myself as a leader of people, and I don't lead them by being their boss, because I always thought as soon as I get to a senior level, everyone listens to me. Everyone will take me seriously and I will be the person everyone looks to. And I very quickly learned that it doesn't happen like that. I very quickly found that people, by earning their trust and winning them round and showing them that I deliver on what I promise, that they can trust me and they can follow me, and it's grown and grown and grown and grown. And this is one of my favourite quotes, and this is something that I quote back to people that I meet all over the world, because I've been very lucky that I get to travel everywhere. And lots of time in America, Japan, all these different places, and dealing with these different cultures has really taught me that you can't sheep dip continuous improvement. It doesn't work. You've got to change the way you deliver that message to different cultures, different generations. You've got some generations that Generation X and Generation Y expect automation, they expect things to be flashy and be fancy. But the boomers perhaps don't quite expect that, or they're not used to that, so you've got to try and bring those people along with you. And this quote I find has really helped me in that space. So this is my special 5 tips, a model that I've used. So there's others available, you don't have to follow my one, but I'm just going to share with you what I do to create buzz around the programs that I've delivered with Lean, creating a culture that's on a global scale and a culture that self-sustains. A culture that delivered $12 million last year, just through the people doing what they do because they're inspired by what they're doing. So, the first one I try and do is inspire people by loving what I do. I really try to get across to them that continuous improvement isn't another part of the job or isn't another thing you need to do. It's just the way we do things. And the way I do that is by, yesterday I spent all day packing women's knickers because I went to a fulfillment centre to understand how a process works, a bit of undercover jobs type thing, like that program with the CEO and they go with a fake moustache and glasses. But I was pretending so I could see what it was like. And then I learned to look who I am and what I do till afterwards, and I learned so much yesterday, especially about women's knickers and the variety of colours that you can purchase. And empowering others and creating, I call them advocates, lean advocates, people that can go out there and tell the story and promote it for you, I found has just been revolutionary for me. And I've got like an army now of lean advocates or mini-me's running around who tell the lean story, and especially the ones that are quite vocal up front and say, oh, it doesn't work, you can't do it that way, and then they go away and they learn and they do it, and then they go away and champion the cause. It's a brilliant feeling. And spreading that belief amongst people has been massive for me, particularly with this project, with Project Lunaring, which is the Everslean podcast. Getting people to believe in that project, I thought was going to be the hardest thing to do, but it's actually been the total opposite. I've been able to spread that belief of what it can do, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later, but creating that belief in a program and showing everything. The guys touched on it this morning when they talked about starting with the people, doing the 5S in the storage area. It's exactly the way that I started off and what we started doing. Get that belief, get those quick wins, that low-hanging fruit, win people round, and then the rest just happens because people buy into it. So number 2 is about making it fun. So I know I'm presenting slides now, which kind of makes me like a liar. I don't use slides. I made these last night. I don't use slides at all. I try and just wing it. And I know it sounds really bad, but I find that if I just speak passionately about things, the message comes across clearly and people understand, and I can change the message depending on who I'm talking to, different levels, inspire them, make it fun, make it out of games. I love to get the Lego out and play Lego games with people, learn about continuous improvement that way. Gamification, you've heard of gamification? Where you make learning into a competition, loads of stuff like that. I'm always doing stuff like that, leaderboards, anything that hooks people in. I love to hook people in. And then create that buzz about the program. So when I've developed lean cultures in the past, I will meet with the regional directors and the VPs of the different areas I'm going to, and I will sell them what I'm doing as if it was my own. I will sell it to them, I'll make it really fun. I call it making it sexy. That's probably not the right term, but I'll make it sexy and fun and exciting so that they're interested in it, not business-like and boring and difficult sounding. I try and make it fun and build that excitement around it. So one of the things that I've got really into recently, not just externally but in other places, is podcasting. Because podcasting now is a way that people take in information. It's become huge, and I didn't realise how big it was until I looked into some stats around it and the listening numbers and the sponsorship and the way companies are now investing in these things is absolutely huge. And when I looked up continuous improvement podcasts and lean podcasts, they're all American. Like, everything on there was American. And I'm not just saying it was a competition, but it was a bit shit, right? The sound quality was poor, it was really business-like and boring, and I'm thinking, is someone going to listen to that in their own time whilst they're driving in their car, whilst they're cooking their dinner? They're all going for a run. They're not. It's boring. And continuous improvement isn't boring, and I really wanted to make it really clear outside of my normal influence that continuous improvement is fun and it is sexy and it can be really good. So creating that buzz, creating that excitement, interviewing directors, interviewing associates that have taken part in lean activities, interviewing them, getting them to talk about their experiences, putting it out in a podcast format has really taken off. And 14,500 listeners averaging on those sorts of podcasts, because people enjoy listening to it. And then I have people come up to me, oh, can we come on the podcast? Can we talk about what we've done in our sortation area? Or can we talk about what we've done on our dock? And people want to get involved. I do things like challenges. So I'd say, right, this month's challenge is I want as many Kaizen improvements on a given subject as possible. Go. And it got a prerequisite of that is they had to do the foundation level of the course. So they'd all go and do the foundation level of the course. So my numbers went up, the amount of people that are doing it. They're then getting the knowledge. They're then going away and doing the activity, the teach me, tell me, then the show me piece. And then we get the benefits off the back of it. And by doing that, all of the directors, all the senior leaders see that this is happening in these different areas, and they were buzzing off the back of it. And then I just keep doing these challenges. And as a prize, I send them a food van. And they have a food van in their yard for 24 hours, cooking them baking sandwiches and stuff. It's an easy win because it inspires people and they get involved. My wife tells me off for thinking big. I think too big. So I have a DIY project, like, I can do that, nail that. Or my son wants something, and I'll go, no, don't buy that. He wanted he's got steering wheel and pedals for a racing game on his Xbox. And they do this rack that you put it in, and it makes it like a racing car. I was like, don't buy one, I'll make it. So I made it out of wood. Genius idea, it weighs a ton. Anyway, I like to think big, and I won't just sort of aim here, I will aim up here with the things that I do. So I create white papers, and I'll write the white paper on a business model, normally about 5 years out. And I always try to under-promise and over-deliver in the first couple of years to get the support, but then going forward, I will aim really, really high and put really high numbers in there. But I'm confident that I can get those numbers, because it's not me that's going to deliver it, it's people that are inspired and want to go and do it. And that's why I asked the question earlier about the belts, because people come back and ask, do the different belts. Because I get people coming to me all the time asking to do things that are pitched at a much more senior level, but they're desperate to do it because they've done all the stuff that's pitched at their level. And that's great, that's absolutely brilliant. Particularly the more junior leaders, they see continuous improvement, in my experience, as an opportunity to move up the ladder. And that's what happened to me. If I hadn't have given that opportunity, and I'll tell you a really funny story with that, that senior leader that employed me in Royal Mail and gave me that opportunity to be the WO pillar lead, fast forward 10 years or so, he's working for me now. And that's the story, and I thought it'd be awkward, but it's absolutely fine. And it's just great that he inspired me, gave me that opportunity. I now do that to other people. I give them the opportunity to speak up, come forward and get involved. And now I tell him everything he said at the top was wrong. He used to tell me off, because when we used to get visitors come in, like We had a company called Flow Store once that come in. They do like the tubes and the brackets to create the solutions to move stuff around. And they came in to present to us the stuff we were going to do. And I was like, have you got any mugs? Have you got any hats? Have you got anything I can have for free? And when they left, one goes, don't you ever ask for free stuff again. It's really embarrassing. I remind you of that quite often. So in respect of the 5-year plan and exploring the unexplored, I'm a big one for networking. I will gate crash Zoom meetings, and if I'm in a building and there's a meeting going, I'll just go knock on the door and walk in and say hiya, and then have a chat with them and get talking. And I'll make sure I don't leave that room without them knowing what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And I find that I've built a network over time that's really, really helped me. And a prime example is the relationships I've got with Catalyst. So when I first started developing the lean program for a company that I'm working for, I spoke to Martin and Jenny and the team, and I was like, this is what we're doing, you know, I want to do my master black belt, I want to do this, I want to do that, and they were so supportive of me. And that relationship, and I'm hearing that from all of you today as well, actually, that relationship has continued, and we've stayed close, and hence why I'm here today. And they've been a great support for me with this podcast that I'm going to share with you in a minute. So, the next one for me is the, I've done that one, I don't know what I'm doing, sorry, I've jumped. Is building the brand and earning that trust. So when I created the lean programs into the organisations that I have, I try everything I can to make them different from any existing program. So we don't send out the weekly newsletter that goes out, which is just boring text that just says, oh, this week we've done that, and we've saved this, and we've done that. We create podcasts to share that information. We create really fun, sexy logos that make it really stand out. We do little lean bite-sized videos with people, 15-minute videos that show how to use a tool or how to understand where lean came from, or just something that's inspiring and exciting. That seems to hook people because it's different to what they normally see. You're not getting these emails come through all the time. If there's information that needs to go out that talks about data and stuff, I only send it to people that need to see it. I don't send it out to the whole world. I'll send them the podcast where I'll just summarise what the benefits were. And it seems to work. And I come from a background where you need to move fast. So I like to move really, really quick with things. And the philosophy that I work under is, if you think of the idea on the Monday morning, and we're running it globally Tuesday afternoon, it's bang, it's out there, and if it fails, it fails. So I learn from it and we move on. And creating that psychological safety, that safe space so people don't be afraid to fail. I'll tell you a story in a minute about a guy that I spoke to this week about failing and the cost of failure, but it was mind-blowing for me. It really opened some thought-provoking moments for me. And then creating that influence with those senior leaders through the podcast, I found has really, really helped. And I now get senior leaders coming to me asking to do a podcast for their country about something they're doing locally. And it's got nothing to do with me, but they just want me to do it because they know it works. So Project Luminary, this is my current project. So this is the Ever Slim podcast. So if I go back to November, I was having a conversation with Martin, and I said, oh, it must be difficult for you at the moment with the current climate and the cost of living crisis and everyone cutting back. And he said to me, no, actually, it's really popular. And what's happening at the moment is people are looking for continuous improvement to drive frugality and to improve the way they work. And it's actually benefiting businesses. And my brain started ticking. And I suddenly thought, imagine if I could create a platform which anyone can access, which spreads the word of continuous improvement, breaks down that barrier that's complicated, that is really hard, that's really boring, and make it exciting. So I listened to those boring American ones, and I thought, well, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it a little bit more radio-like. So I do a radio show, I'm into all my little jingles and my little fun stuff that goes with it, and that's what I've tried to bring to this podcast. So currently I've got 5 episodes that have been launched. One of those is a trailer. Catalyst have been wonderful with this. They've sponsored the first 10 episodes and really helped me get this up and running, because there's costs that I had involved. Like, I've got the equipment to record, but I didn't have things like a website, and I didn't have the media host to be able to put it on a platform, and they've been amazing to help me with that. And I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now if they didn't. So I do genuinely appreciate what you've done for me there. And I go on LinkedIn and I just spam people. I just write to people people that you would never believe would come on. So I wrote to Jeff Bezos. He hasn't responded yet, I'm sure he's on. I've gone to Christian Horner, who is the team principal for Formula One Red Bull, because I'd love him to come on and talk about, we want these people to come and talk about F1 pit stops. Because we all use that as an analogy about ultimate 5S and everyone knowing what they're doing and it all being brilliant. I want him to come and talk about that, so I will find someone. I will find them, and they will come and talk. They will come and talk about it. So there's lots of episodes. And the first episode I did with a guy called Anil. Now Anil used to be the director of continuous improvement at the NHS, and he was part of the team that created the COVID vaccine. And he spoke about how they used continuous improvement to create that vaccine, which was absolutely mind-blowing. Because for me, who's used continuous improvement to move a box from here to there, you know, if it doesn't get there, oh well. This was about people's lives, and it was real, and it just blew my mind. It was just so brilliant, and he's been great. The next person I spoke to is a wellness coach and a leadership coach. And Debbie was just brilliant, and she spoke about how to motivate people, how to make the team feel special. Again, really thought-provoking, really good conversation. I learned so much from these conversations, and I go back and I go, that repeat again, that rinse and repeat that I'm able to do. I go back into work the next day and I go, oh yeah, the best way to motivate that person is going by this model. No one knows anything think about it. I don't, but they think I do because I've heard someone else say it. But it works. People then research it, they go away and they do it, and it works. Then I had the Danilo guy who talked about automation, and there was a really interesting story there. I had a guy come to do my gutters. I cleaned my gutters out, and it was icy. And I said, I'm really sorry, I've not had a chance to break the ice up. He goes, oh, don't worry, I don't need a ladder. And I said, on the way up, how are you going to do it? He goes, oh no, I've got the mod stuff. He had this mobile phone, this rod with this camera on the end of it, and this hoover. And he just walked along the gutters and sucked it all out. It's amazing. That was automation. That was proper lean at its best. At the end of it, he goes, I'll send you the video. He clicked the button, sent me the invoice to the video, done. It blew my mind. And Danilo told the story, some other stories about that, which was just amazing. And then I struck gold. I reached out to a guy called James Franz, who is the director of something, global director from the Toyota Way Academy. And he agreed to come on, and he spoke about the Toyota Way and how he spent time in Japan and how he spent time in North America. And it was amazing. I was just in awe. He was just telling me all about the Toyota Way, the best practices, the things you can do, the not to chase a number of Kaizen events, the not to chase a financial benefit, about working with a business objective and what can you do to drive that business objective. It was just brilliant. It just real click, 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 click going on in my brain. And then the one that I released on Monday is really fitting, right? I reached out to Ian Annan, and he said yes. He came on the podcast, and that episode went out on Monday, and he spoke about how continuous improvement is used in the UK space industry. He spoke about the recent launch with Virgin Orbit that happened in Cornwall, where they did make space. You've got the Kármán line and the 100 kilometres. They made space. They just didn't dispatch the satellites into orbit. But he spoke about that, and he spoke about the root cause analysis that's used within that. He spoke about the benchmarking and the knowledge share that goes on between the different agencies. Because in my mind, it was like it was in the 60s and the 70s, where Russia didn't talk to America and America didn't talk to Russia. I thought it was all like that, but it's not. Really, really interesting. That's as far as I've got. Now, I do have guests lined up for the full 10 of the first season, but I'm not going to tell you who they are. One of them needs to commit to a date, and we're not going anywhere until he does. Yeah? It was supposed to be the first episode. It's going to be the last. But this gentleman's going to come on and talk about what is Lean Six Sigma. And then this week, I'll be interviewing the author of Lean for Dummies, and she's going to talk about what is Lean. Because I get a lot of emails come through saying, look, I've never done this before. Can you just tell me, what is the difference? I just have no idea between the lot. And they're going to come on and talk about what the differences is. And for me, it's going in at that grassroots level, keeping it basic, keeping it simple, and just giving them a little bit of inspiration and just a bit of buzz around it. And I think it will work. So I'm looking forward to those 2 episodes. And just really quickly, so this was a snapshot. I don't know how to use this dashboard yet. It's a bit hard to use. But this is the dashboard that I can see from the podcast, and I can see how it works. So my growth each week is 271% in the number of listeners that I'm getting. And it's turned into a bit of a full-time job. I'm finding it difficult to find the time to do this now. So I'm doing this I've got a 6-month-old now. Luckily, when she came along, I'm up till 2 o'clock in the morning. So I do this at night, from 7 to 2 in the morning. It's all about the podcast, editing, reaching out to people and stuff like that. So this is the reach. You can see all the different countries that are listening, all from LinkedIn. All I do is troll LinkedIn. I have a recruiter's account, so I can do stuff that you can't normally do, which is quite fun. And I would say, all of this costs money, and funding is something that I would like to get out and do interviews remotely. I'd like to go and interview frontline workers in different organisations and get their perspectives. And to do that, I need equipment. I can't rock up with a mobile phone and I'll be up to somebody. It's going to look terrible. So if anybody is interested in getting involved in the project and sponsorship in some way, I'd be happy to talk about it. Because I can see this being really big and influencing far more than it is already. But it's an exciting space. Thank you.